said, would you please bring your speech in to be looked over by us? And I thought, well, why don't they bring in the other speeches in, the cheerleader and whatever. So I was telling my mom, I'm like, I have to submit my speech to the principal. And she said, why? And I said, I don't know. So she goes in with me to the principal's office. My mother was this very Rita Hayworth type babe. And so she's standing in the principal's office, and he starts telling her, your daughter has very sort of radical political views. So we want to sort of check her speech before she gives it. My mother stands up and says, you can either refuse to speak or you can submit to oppression. I probably speak at graduation anyway, because I was not good in front of crowds, so I was like, okay, I won't speak. What I'm telling you is I really feel like I'm DNA wired to be an activist. I've been one my whole life, and I'm exhausted from it. It's like pushing a rock uphill every single day. But I will tell you that it's worth it, because you see things change. When I started doing what I do almost 30 years ago, when I was 25, it's unbelievable the changes that we've seen, both good and bad. 2 years ago, I went to DC with Dr. Neil Barnard from PCRM. Everyone knows Dr. Neil Barnard? Anyone not? It's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and they lobby Washington for everything from no animal testing to healthier school lunches, whatever. I was in Italy. My Italian cell phone rings. It's Dr. Barnard. Hey, what are you doing? I'm in Italy. What are you doing? He said, I need you to come to Washington with me. We're going to lobby for the new healthy eating guidelines. So I was like, okay. So we go to this meeting, and the room is filled with lobbyists. Filled. Like, you need a shower just walking in the room. So we're sitting there, and we are lobbying to get vegetables, like their justifiable place on the plate, the pyramid, whatever it was going to be. And everyone else is lobbying and jockeying for position. Everybody from McCormick Spices, who literally tap danced in front of the USDA committee, singing about spices, to the junk food lobby, which is called the Grocery Manufacturers Association, and they lobbied for not having a nanny state and each family deciding how much junk food is healthy for them. And you can see how well that's working out. So we left that meeting, and a year went by, and Neil said we have to go back down again, because they want to take vegetables completely out of the picture. I mean, they'll put them on there, but... So we go down, and now they present us with the thing they have, which is currently my plate. Okay, everyone's seen the plate? So the plate's got whole grains, vegetables, protein, and some. Anyway. So in protein is all animal protein. But on the side of the plate is a little plate that says dairy. Why isn't dairy in with the other animal protein? Anybody ever ask themselves that? Yeah, because the dairy lobby gives the USDA and the FDA so much money that they got their own plate. Because they said, please don't lump us in. We need a little side plate. So I'm here to tell you that if you think your health is not for sale to the highest bidder, I got a bridge in Brooklyn. And I have lakefront property in Arizona. So, does that mean we have no voice? No, not at all. Not at all. Because at the end of the day, you are a consumer. And while you may not have a voice in government, because to be real, we don't. Right, we have a president who in 2008 said he will have labeling. We're still waiting for that. The good news is, while we had this huge defeat this week, and in the Senate's defense, although I'm not one to defend the Senate, this rider was buried in the Farmer Assurance Act. And if you listen to these guys talk at meetings, as I have with Dr. Barnard, 80% of them, 80% of your representatives, put that number in your head, write it down, something, don't read the bills they vote on. Their assistants don't read them, their staff doesn't read them, they go, oh, farmer, let's sign that, it must be good. So Monsanto cleverly buried it deep down. So on that one, I'll be honest and tell you, we're screwed. We're screwed. So Monsanto is held without any responsibility, no matter what happens to the planet, to humanity, whatever, forever. Now, it's not new. Like, it's now law, but prior to this, Monsanto has been demanding that farmers sign this very same rider whenever they plant their seeds. So they're really not held liable anyway. Now they just made it official. So it's sort of like for them, this was a little move laterally. For us, it was a defeat. There's no really other way to couch it. However, there are in coming up in the midterm elections to demand labeling, okay? If one state passes, one, that's what they don't want you to know. If we can pass one state, if it's Rhode Island, which has 3 people, it doesn't matter. If it passes, do you really think that Heinz is going to print labels just for Rhode Island? Do you think Kellogg's is going to print their labels just for Rhode Island? That's why they spend so much money. How much money did they spend to convince Californians not to vote for Prop 37?
Lots.
$46 million in 30 days. $46 million in 30 days. What did they tell Californians? How did they defeat this? Who wouldn't want this? They told them it was going to cost them $400 a month more in their grocery bills if there was labeling of GMOs on the food. Okay? Now, when they were pressed as to where this number came from, they basically said they pulled it out of their butts. But it didn't matter, because they convinced California shoppers, I wouldn't want to spend $400 more a month. So they voted against Prop 37. They knew nothing about it. And they think it means nothing. So your biggest thing as an activist is education. Right? You need to be as smart or smarter than they are, because they can argue their points really well. So, having sat across from them in Washington and listened to their whole spiel, what do they tell us about GMO food? Why should we allow it? Anybody? What do they tell us? What's the big deal?
It hasn't been proven unsafe.
No? What did they tell us? There's no difference between GMO food and our food. Real food. Right? What else do they tell us? It's nutritionally more dense. It will absolutely end hunger in the third world. Farmers can't wait to have these crops because it makes their life so much better. And it yields higher food quantities. And they tell us all these things. Okay, now, a couple things. And this is your best argument ever. When you're sitting across from someone who is pro-GMO, this is the most important thing you can tell them, in my view, in my humble opinion. So here you are. They tell you it's nutritionally more dense, better for the planet, better for farmers, and it'll end world hunger. So don't start with, how come the only studies have been done by you guys? That's like the inmates running the asylum. Then you sound like a lunatic. That's hurt that. You can't get all emotional. You just have to ask the one question. What do you think that question is? One question.
Why hasn't it happened already? It's been 20 years.
If it's so great, if it's so flippin' great, I would put it on my label, you would pick up the package and it would sing the Star Spangled Banner. So if it's so great, why don't you want it on the label? And you know what, when you ask them that question, you know what they say to you? They walk away. They say, this is not the time or the place for this discussion. Really? When is the time and when is the place? So the question you have to ask yourself is, what do we do now? What do we do now? We had this massive defeat. If we don't pass labeling, how do we make a change? What do we do? Well, you educate yourself. What's the percentage of foods that contain GMOs? It's a very clear percentage. It's all over the press. You must know these things. If you're going to talk to people and you're going to try to educate them, you can't just say GMOs are bad. Because they go, okay. Is there a Santa Claus? Like, we have to be as educated and smart and calm as they are. If we're secure in what we know and confident in what we know, then you can argue the point. If you're not, and you flounder, the minute you show a sign of weakness, they have you. The minute you sound like a conspiracy nut, they have you. What's the percentage of processed foods that contain GMOs?
8%.
Nope. You're close. You're closer. No, she was really close. 73%. You have to be precise. 73%, unless you're going to say, well, about 75%. But then you don't sound sure. 73% of processed food contains GMOs. Now, they did concede and label produce. How do you know? This is something else you have to know if you're going to talk to them. How do you know if food is conventional, organic, produce, conventional, organic, or GMO? Numbers. What about the numbers? Where are the numbers? The annoying little stickers that we all hate, but we should now love. do you know if it's conventionally grown?
4.
4 numbers. How do you know if it's organic? 9. 9 what? 5 numbers that begins with 9. And GMO?
8.
5 numbers that begin with 8. You have to be positive. You can't just like throw little pieces out there. You have to talk to them like you know this down to your toes. What's wrong with GMOs? What's wrong with them? I mean, why shouldn't we have them? Why shouldn't we have the DNA from a spider spliced into goat milk to create a Kevlar vest? Do we really know the impact of GMOs on the planet?
No.
We don't. They could turn out to be the best thing since sliced bread. They won't. But they could. It's why, as an activist group, your demand has to be for labeling. Because to demand the banning of GMOs at this point makes us sound loony, and quite frankly, it's blue sky. It ain't gonna happen. At least not right now. So demanding labeling is something we can get done. That's the thing we can absolutely make happen if we wake up. The problem with America is, this lecture should not be necessarily by me, but any lecture on GMO education should be done in a coliseum. That's how many people should be interested. The problem we face is America likes to be fat, complacent, and happy. We want to watch The Real Housewives of whatever the hell city it's in now. We want to watch Survivor not really survive. And we want to watch stupid sitcoms. And we want to bury our head in the sand and pretend that somebody else is going to do it. Well, somebody else is sitting in this room. And if we don't step up, we have, in my estimation, and a friend of mine who works in a food lab, 3 years. 3 years is nothing. 3 years is a blip. In 3 years, there'll be no turning back. We are very close to the tipping point. We are already at the place where we're asking how much should we allow? How much is safe? We don't know. It's like living in a giant petri dish. So your goal now is to get labeling. If I can buy tomato sauce with or without salt, I should be able to buy tomato sauce with or without GMOs. It should be my choice. And over and over and over, you have to ask the same question. Every petition you sign, every Facebook post you make, everything you say has to come back to the same question. If they're okay, if they're so great, why won't you put it on the label? Why won't you put it on the label? Please, I'm just asking. And it's not, you're lying, it's not name-calling, I'm just asking. Why won't you put it on the label? What's the big deal? If they're so great, what's the big deal? Come on, dudes, put it on the label. Did you know right now, anybody, any product in this country can say they're GMO-free? Anybody can say it. Anybody. Do you know why? Do you know what the law is? If you haven't had the product tested for GMOs, you can say they don't have any. Because technically, you don't know. So therefore, you can say it. So we live in a country, in a political system that's designed to defeat us in this measure. Your defense is, at the end of the day, all of these companies that want to sell you GMOs and processed foods, what do they want? What do they care about most? They want your dollar. So vote with your dollar. And you can start by not buying processed foods. Unless it's certified organic, you don't know what's in it. And if it contains corn, wheat, or soy, you're about 90% sure that there's some form of GMO in it. So you can start by buying real organic food, sucking it up and paying the price. I know it's a little more expensive. I get it. What are you going to do? You can either pay for it now or the planet can pay for it later. Your kids can pay for it later. The more we demand better quality, the more better quality becomes affordable. We unfortunately get to be the generation that sucks it up so our kids don't look at pictures of lakes and cornfields. This was what it looked like. You can't walk in it now because we don't know what's in there. Your head will grow out your elbow. And GMOs might turn out to be okay. The problem is it's DNA. How do you clean it up? You don't clean it up. It's like having an oil spill. You can at least clean that up. You put a little thing, somehow it cleans up, sort of. DNA, what do? You can't see it. Everyone's heard the famous story of the farm in Lancaster County. Grew corn for 100 years organic, before we even knew what organic was. 3 generations of farmers. They used to sell their corn to Little Bear corn chips, which still make organic corn chips to this day. Shipped some corn out about, it's got to be 10 years ago. GMOs were just starting to be a thing that we were hearing about. And Little Bear returned their corn and said, it's GMO. They were like, no, man, you know us. We did. Who would know? Us? Had it tested. GMO corn. 5 miles down the road, GMO corn was growing. Pollen got in the air, cross-contaminated. That farmer will never grow grow organic corn again, ever, 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 ever. His farm was ruined. Done. He sold it to a developer, they built McMansions. What are you going to do? Right? So now we have Bill Sack, who is our Secretary of Agriculture. And now we have our new czar of healthy food, which I don't know why we have a czar. In theory, we're a democracy. We don't have a czar. And his name is Michael Taylor. Who's Michael Taylor? Anybody know? He was Monsanto's attorney for 10 years. Yeah, another genius moved by President Obama, bless his heart. But we have an organic garden on the White House lawn. The White House dining room is certified organic, and the Monsanto dining room is certified organic. Think they're worried? Why does Monsanto have a seed warehouse in Norway of heirloom organic seeds? Anybody know why they have it? Go ahead.
To feed their workers.
Well, the feed their workers is in their dining room. The reason they have this warehouse of seeds is so when they screw everything else up, they will have the food. We all think it's money and power and politics that wins in the end. It's who's got the food. So our goal has to be to demand the truth about food, and it starts with labeling. When you can get them to put it on the label, when you can get them to tell you why they don't want to tell you, is when you start to get at the core of what's really going on. So unless we demand the truth, unless we demand better, the person next to you is not going to do it. You have to assume that nobody's going to do it but you. So you sign petitions and you send them to Washington, and maybe nothing will happen from those petitions, maybe not. But eventually change happens. Revolution starts small, and nothing short of revolution will change what's happening to our food. If we don't step up now, if we stay complacent and think someone else will do it, we're done before we even begin. So when Barbara says, go in the back and take the petition home and write to the FDA, eventually they're going to get tired of hearing us and they're going to listen. You're going to sit in front of them long enough and something will happen, even if you're not happy with the result. I remember lobbying with Arlen Specter, of all people, for subsidies for organic farmers in Pennsylvania. And we lobbied for 10 years. Because organic farmers never got subsidies, ever, 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 ever. But commercial farms got subsidies. If there was a frost or whatever happened, they would get paid if their crop didn't come in. But organic farmers, as my mother used to say, nothing. So finally, after 10 years of lobbying, probably we don't have 10 years now, but after 10 years of lobbying, we called into his office, my co-lobbyer, and we sat down and we said, what happened? He said, success. I said, great. He said, organic farmers are going to start getting subsidies. And I said, wonderful. Tell me. He said, for every $1,800 that a commercial farmer gets, organic farmers will now get one. And I said, one what? 100, one. He goes, one. $1? Yes. So how did we arrive at $1? Federal law states you can only get a 100% increase. 100% increase from 0 is 1. I'm guessing by now they're probably up to $10. So that's the world we live in. That's the world we move in. So for us to become a voice, number one, we have to have the same vision, which is what do we want? We can't have factions out demanding GMOs be banned and factions over here saying don't do this to my water and don't do this to my corn or whatever. We have to be unified in the voice. And the voice has to be put it on the package. And we can never waver from that. When they say, what do you want? Put it on the package. What do you want? Put it on the package. Why do you want to put it on the package? Why don't you want to? Well, why do you want it? Why don't you not want it? I want it because I want to know what's in my food. Why don't you want it on there? I'm telling you, if it was in my food and it was this great, it would sing the Star Spangled Banner when somebody looked at the package. Because I want everybody in the world to know I had GMOs in my food. So our question, our response has to be consistent. It's like the little drop of water that goes on the rock and eventually splits the rock in half. That's the only way we're going to do it. Every one of us is that little drop of water. And if we give up or get discouraged or look at the Senate and go, they're all corrupt, they're going to do what they want, then fine. Nothing changes. Your kids will look at a picture of cornfields. But I will go down fighting. Because we're talking about our food here. We're not talking about something outside us. We're talking about the thing that makes us who we are as humans. If your food is real, you are authentically human, and you will not tolerate what they're doing. If you want to continue to go to the Golden Arches and do whatever, then, hey man, have a nice life. Leave the activism to people who really want to make change. If you think it's cute to do this, I remember when the war in Iraq was beginning, and I went to a pre-war anti-war thing to try to get us to not go. And I was walking down the street with my placard and my girlfriend behind two teenage girls in their sort of Gap bell-bottoms and their fake peace jackets. And the one said to the other, "Oh my God, this is so cool. It's just like a real protest." So my head exploded. And I said something probably horrible to them. The thing that should scare us is that Bob Dylan's music is as relevant or more so today as it was in the 60s. So not much has changed, and what has changed from the bottom up, not the top down. If you're waiting for Vilsack or Taylor or even President Obama to change anything, forget it. It's like trying to ask the Titanic to make a U-turn. They're on the course they're on, and they're just going forward because all they care about at the end of the day is money. Money and power. But the power lies here. The power lies here. So if we stand as a unified voice and we say over and over and over, it's kind of like the kid in the grocery aisle with their mother, "Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have this?" Eventually you go, "Shut up, you can have it." If enough of us say, "Put it on the label, put it on the label, put it on the label," it might take us 2 more years, but we'll get it. We've got 2 years till the midterm elections, not even 2 years. We need to fight like hell now. So that come November, in what's 2 years from now? Math's not my strong suit. Anyway, then we'll get it. And any state that's got it on the books, we have to support that activism for the same question. Not banning GMOs, not this, not that. Put it on the label. And the answer has to be the same every question they ask us. Put it on the label. And the same question. Okay, that's so great. Why don't you want it on the label? Just asking. And you can stay perfectly calm. Oh yeah? Really? It's that great? Wow. Not going to harm the planet? No. Not going to hurt farmers? No. Why do you want to put it on the label? They can never answer you. Ever. I'm just saying. Okay, I can take questions now. Sorry. Yes?
Yeah, and I was informed to think that I heard that most of the European countries don't allow GMO, certainly not Germany, not Britain. How have they done it? And what's so crazy about our
Well, the truth of the matter is that they have tried to stay GMO-free. But because, all right, so they started out as GMO-free, all of Europe. The EU rejected American crops because we had GMOs. They didn't want any. You know, back in the day when Dan Rather was still the anchor of CBS TV News, they were ripping out cornfields in Europe because they didn't want GMOs. So we sued the European Union and forced them to take our stuff. We said it was anti-trade or something. So we got them, we won. Because we win. And we win, we always win. So, well, not always, but we win but then lose big. So, anyway. So now they have allowed a 0.9%, so less than 1% contamination of GMOs. But there are countries like Germany, Norway, Sweden, I believe, Italy's trying like hell, and Portugal that are still GMO free. Like, they will not take it in. They buck the system and say no. And the way they do it is, while their governments are no less corrupt than ours, the advantage that European countries have over us is they're still very connected to their food, to where it comes from, how it works, how they cook it, how they eat. And yes, junk food is certainly making its headway there. Thank you to us. We've contributed snacks and french fries to cuisine. Yay, USA. But because they're still connected to food, because they are still largely agricultural countries, they're less likely to let their living become compromised or ruled by some. They also really hate authority. And they don't trust their governments at all. We say we don't. We do. We say we don't. We're like, the government's corrupt. But deep down, Americans hold this very naive belief that if this was so bad, the little white-haired men in Washington wouldn't let it happen. Americans have this lovely naivete where you go, wow. I mean, I remember, and I don't want to get political, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I remember when George Bush was elected in 2000, and we were in Europe because we spent a lot of time in Italy, and our friends were like, wow, he's a genius, right? Yeah. So now we go back in 2004, and we've re-elected him, and they're like, wow, so you're a genius. Yeah, it's like, we got it the first time, but, so like, to us, they think, like in Italy, for instance, their presidential term is 5 years. They haven't had a president last 5 years in, I can't even tell you how many decades. Because they kicked them out. They're like, you guys are a democracy, right? Yeah. Why do you kick them out? Well, it's not that easy. You have to like, it's easy, you're a democracy. Kick them out. You don't like what they're doing, kick them out. We all say, the Senate and the Congress have like a 2% approval, no, it's actually 11%. 11% approval rating, right? Yet you talk to people on the street, would you vote for your, oh yeah, my guy's great. My senator's great. He's fabulous. You're like, wow, really? Call Bob Casey's office, ask him if they read the Foreign Assurance Act. Ask him if he read it. You know what his assistant will tell you? The senator's very busy, they can't read everything that comes across their desk. Great, that's great for us. So that's why. First of all, the people are still connected to the land, and secondly, they know their government's corrupt and don't expect them to do anything. So their revolutions happen quicker. They're also smaller countries. Like, we're huge. Like, they're smaller countries, so like, when you live in Italy, you go to France like we go to Connecticut. So for them, it's much more of a controllable environment than us. We're this huge Titanic of a country.
But don't the people, let's say Vilsack, those people who are certainly bombarded with all of our emails saying, get Monsanto out of the food business, don't they realize that Europe has done this and that Monsanto has to know that they're not wanted? I mean, don't they make that connection?
Sure, I don't care.
Yeah.
Vilsack was named the GMO Governor of the Year when he was governor of Iowa. That's how friendly he is to the biotech industry. If he could funnel every piece of agricultural grant money to biotech, he would do it. He would do it. He thinks it's the wave of the future. Right? The fact that Monsanto is unwelcome in Europe means nothing to them. They'll just move somewhere else. They'll just do something else. They can out-money, out-lawyer, outstay everybody. They just are, they are the true Darth Vader of the universe at the moment. Like, we think we have Darth Vader. We high fructose corn syrup, we ain't seen nothing yet. So, but, even Darth Vader's got a chink in his armor. And theirs happens to be their wallet. Right?
Whole Foods claims to
Yes.
not carry GMO.
Well, that's not the claim. They claim that their product, their Organic 365 line, does not have GMOs. And what they did recently, I wish they didn't take 5 years to do it, but what they've done is, I think, probably the best thing they've done since they opened their doors. And that is by demanding that anybody who is a supplier of Whole Foods, regardless of the manufacturer, declare on their label or get rid of GMOs within 5 years, will cause what Food Democracy now called a cross-contamination of marketing. Because nobody's going to print labels just for Whole Foods. So if in 5 years everybody has to say, it's going to be like, God damn, everybody's got to say it. So we do have that coming up. It's 5 years away, which is a long time. It's a long time for this. mean, it's not a long time, and it's a long time for this. We're so close to the tipping point but the fact that they've done it, and the fact that there's more and more press being brought to this, which we see as meaningless but isn't. There's not a lot of people on the street now that don't know what GMO means. There's not a lot. And slowly people are beginning to question it more and more and more. Not fast enough, not for us, but the more they start to question and the more awareness we can create with rallies and whatever it is that we decide to do, the better shot we have. Yes?
So where are the people with money who do not stand for GMOs? That's what I'm trying to find.
What was the question?
Where are the people with money that do not stand for
There's gotta be
GMOs?
somebody somewhere, right?
There probably is. There probably is. I mean, the biggest problem that those people face is political pressure. Auditing by the IRS. I remember it was about 5 years ago. How long has Patrick McCarty gone? Less than 5 years, right? So probably about 5 years ago. No, it was before President Obama. It was still under the Bush administration. We got invited to go to Cuba to teach. And you could go to Cuba under the guise of education. We were going in under the Ministry of Education, and we had a huge corporate sponsor paying for about 8 teachers to go teach cooking, shelter massage, healthy living. So, 2 weeks before the trip, we got a phone call from the sponsor. He was pulling his money. The trip was off. We're like, what? Wait, what? And he goes, well, nobody should really go to Cuba. What? When we finally got down to the bottom of it, we could go. He could sponsor us going. Coming back in would guarantee that he was audited, that his company was audited, not once, not twice, but probably for the rest of his days. Because they did not want us going to Cuba. So for people to step forward when it comes to lots and lots of money, unless there's a big outcry, like unless we can find, like the OTA, which is the Organic Trade Association, is a very loud voice in this department. And they get so much political pressure from the government to shut up. So it just depends on how long somebody will stand up or what they're willing to take or how much they really stand. Most people will back down. Most people will say, you know what, I can't really do this. I'm not going to have my life ruined over GMOs. And if you think they won't ruin you, you'd be wrong. I remember when Bill Clinton left office, and I love him, sorry. If you don't, I apologize, but I'd make him king. Because we were at peace and we had money, and he's smart, he can read. Anyway, so, sorry, I didn't mean to get political, sorry. But when he left office, he was being interviewed on a late-night talk show on public television. And I remember him saying, anybody who's elected to office or anyone who becomes a lobbyist who thinks they're going to Washington to change the game will be ruined. Because they don't want the game changed. They like the game the way it's played. And when I went to Washington with Neil Barnhart, I was sitting next to a strategist. And I said to him, so what about all this? And he said, it's just what it is. And it all comes down to whoever's got the biggest check. And I said to him, what about the good of the American people? You guys are all elected to office. What about the good of the American people? And he said to me, and I quote, what are you, 5? Grow up. So that's why. There's somebody out there who maybe will step up, who knows. If I make millions in the next year, I will step up. So here we go. All the way in the back. Barbara Thomas's sister.
There's some of us here
How'd you even
tonight.
laugh like her? Sorry.
There's some of us here tonight who took their first step by coming here
Yeah.
to hear you.
Yeah.
What do you recommend to those of us? What's the second step? What's the next thing we could do?
Get more involved in this organization, right? Go to a rally or start signing petitions. Write incessantly to your representative, asking them the same question. If GMOs are okay, why doesn't anybody want to put them on the label? And you'll get form letters for the longest time. I send a letter to Bob Casey's office every week. Dear Senator Casey, I have a question. Probably a file. That's what you do. That's your next step. And you vote with your dollar. You buy certified organic. You don't buy a lot of processed food. You know, I'll tell you a story that some of you have heard if you take my classes, because some of you here do. When I was a little girl, My mother, again, was like this forward-thinking hippie who used to shop in what we call health food stores and buy vitamins in unmarked brown bottles. And, you know, I used to stand by the door of the health food store like this because the women in there didn't groom or shave their legs or So, anyway, I have a younger brother who's allergic to both the cold, I'm not kidding, and anything artificial. So my mother was a label reader way before you read labels. So we were allowed to eat 2 cereals, Rice Krispies and cornflakes, because my brother could eat those and not get a rash. So one day, I was about 8 years old, my brother and I are having breakfast, and my mother picks up the package and she says, I wonder what this BHA and BHT is. My brother looked at me, I'll never forget this day, and my entire, if I lived to be 100, looked at me and said, here we go. So my mother called her girlfriend, either Free or Seagull, and they're on the phone. Now this is the 60s, right? So there's no internet, there's no, right? No internet. They call, they decide they're going to call Kellogg's. So they call Kellogg's, they don't get voicemail, they don't get press 1, they get a guy. And the guy puts them in touch with the other guy who talks to, I guess, mothers. So my mother's on the phone, and we're like hanging around the house, and I hear my mother going, well, you must not have children. It lasts 3 seconds, take it out. So then I hear her on the phone with her girlfriend, and she says, it's a preservative in the packaging to make cereal last longer, to which my mother apparently said, take it out, the cereal doesn't last that long, take it out. So they got a letter a few days later from Kellogg's basically saying, thank you for your interest in Kellogg's. I don't care what you think. So my mother and her girlfriend got the entire PTA of my school to boycott Kellogg's and send letters to Kellogg's telling them why they were no longer buying Kellogg's cornflakes. They settled on the cornflakes. This spread from my school's PTA to the state, to the district, to the state of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, all up and down the East Coast. No internet. Mothers, yo, we should get this out, right? In 18 months, they took BHA and BHT out of all the packaging in their cereals. It's bad. Don't clap. It's bad. But these mothers did that because they demanded better. Remember when Meryl Streep went on either the Today Show or something and said, why is there Alar on our apples? Our children shouldn't eat Alar, and they had some doctor on saying it causes birth defects in children. The next day, there were barrels of organic apples everywhere. Where did they come from? Consumers demanded better. If we just sit by and go, oh, I don't know what to do. No, I really want that frozen dinner. I really want lean cuisine. Well, then you're going to get what you get. You're going to get what you get. You have to stand up, stand strong, be tough, suck it up, put on your big girl panties, or as my friend in South Philly, Eric says, hike up your skirt, and take on the job. The job is, food won't change if we don't change it. And it won't change if we don't demand it. And if we are quiet, it's never going to change. We have to be loud and clear and not crazy. If you come across as a crazy hippie, they just go, here we go again. If you're clear and concise and educated, that's when change comes. You have to educate yourself, read everything that comes across your desk on GMOs. And just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Just read, credible science, read credible sites, and pay attention. And that's what will change it. Yes?
Speaking of which, I have one quick comment before on the GMO. In my circle, and I'm new to a lot of this, not a lot of people know about GMOs, but that's just my world.
So now you have a job.
Yeah, I know. So the next question is, what's a good, is there a certain online resource to follow as far as updates on the political movement, or is there a trusted source that you go to?
I have several. Barbara, do you guys have like a clearinghouse for GMO-free New Jersey?
We have a
so
website.
We make it easy?
We have a website, gmofreenj.com. The Institute for Responsible Technology is great, although
the CDC?
First place you go is a little overwhelming, so start with us, and then, and then we also have a resource page with reading materials and websites.
And also the Centers for Science and the Public Interest are brilliant.
Thanks.
Food Democracy Now. Food Democracy Now, they're very radical, I love them. But they're really credible and they don't put any nonsense up. And also a big, big fan of Farm Wars. farmwars.org. It's a bunch of really ticked off farmers. And they're brilliant. And I'll tell you one last thing before I let you go. We, on my TV show, I talked about GMOs. I kind of went off on a rant. And it's very interesting. Our website, first of all, we get thousands of people who say, thank you for telling us about GMOs, but we also get literally thousands of screw you. What's the big deal? And it's all signed by like Joe Smith, John Jones, Mary, right? And you're like, wow. And so I posted something actually on the public television sort of main website where they have all their comments, and I ended my very scientific, very smarty pants answer with, tell your bosses at Monsanto I said hi. So, don't expect that you won't have pushback. Not everybody thinks that this causes no wall. A lot of people prefer things to stay the way they are, and everything's on their head in the sand. And once you know something, though, you can't unknow it. Like, you're new, you can't leave here tonight and pretend you don't know this anymore. I mean, you could, but you won't be able to live with yourself. You just won't. So now you'll educate your friends, and they'll love and hate you at the same time, but as all our friends do. And we have to stand up. I mean, we can't just take this. We have to go down and fight. And we may lose. You have to be aware that we may lose. We might lose big. But we're not going to go down without a fight. And it's the one thing we have most in common, that this country's founded on revolution. Let's have another one. Stop bitching, start a revolution. Yes, hold on, Nika. Yes.
We have the numbers.
We do have the numbers. What we don't have is people who are willing to work really hard for it. Not, well, we do have great numbers. Yes, Nika.
What is this, farmwars.org?
Farmwars.org is a series of farmers who write these very smart, very angry blogs about GMOs, and they're really great. It's amazing. Farmwars.org. I love that. I'm on that site almost every day. Food Democracy Now. Food Democracy Now. Great sites. And they're great sites. They work very hard. Yes?
Christina, you had mentioned that there were 17 states that are trying to go for the labeling, and all we need really is one state.
We need one.
To test. The states currently are Washington State?
Washington State, New Jersey, has it, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Pennsylvania just took a blow, but we're still working on it. We just took a blow. I mean, what happened was our senators voted for this latest thing. So anyway, we're still going to work it. But in our immediate area, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, I think Rhode Island is. I know I laughed about that, but Rhode Island is one of them. Connecticut's one of them. We have to focus on smaller states. Right? Because it doesn't matter how small the state is, they're not going to print labels for just one state.
Right.
And that's the thing, that's why Monsanto spends so much money in a little tiny state, in little tiny counties, because they don't want this to pass in one neighborhood.
And that would be the smart move.
That is the
from
smart
their point of view, it is the smart
But it's
move.
also the smart move from our point of view.
Correct,
So
exactly.
any state you hear has legislation, figure out a way to get involved. Write to the organization, say we support you. You can't really do anything because you can't vote in their state, but you can make it aware. You can make awareness grow. Here's what's happening in Washington. Here's what's happening in Rhode Island. And by doing that, first of all, we don't feel so isolated, like 75 people in New Jersey hoping to change the world. But it also lets them know that they're not isolated in Washington State trying to change the world. And so that's how groundswells start, that's how revolutions begin. And we have the internet. This is in Paris in the 1800s. We can get this done. We can get this done. It's a tough one, but we can get it done. I'm convinced.
Christina,
Otherwise I would go home crying.
I want to say something about the New Jersey situation. We had a conference call yesterday with Assemblywoman Stender, who was the main sponsor of our bill, and she told us something that kind of surprised me, and she said that what she would love is that if all of us call our legislators and ask for in-person meetings. I was so surprised that she said that. And I and others from GMO-free New Jersey are willing to go with you. If you want, if clusters of people want to get together and make appointments with your legislators, we will go into their offices and just talk. It's just, they're just people.
And don't be intimidated. You're not going in there to lecture them. You're going in there to ask them a question, which which is?
If they're so great, why don't we label them?
What's the big deal? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? And the good news about New Jersey, whether you like them, don't like them, is the governor is in support of labeling. Quietly, but he is in support of labeling. So if we can get it to his desk, New Jersey might get it.
But Monsanto will spend equally what they spend in California.
They'll spend it everywhere. They'll spend it in a neighborhood
To convince
to get it
all
done.
of your neighbors. And, I mean, I don't want to sell, but I tell you, this book really will open your eyes. And you can even give, if somebody wants to call, we'll sell the book. If you want to buy a bunch of them, we'll sell them to you at cost to give to people. I know you've given a bunch of them.
Give it to your representatives.
So
Maybe they'll read it since they're not busy reading bills.
Is it the best? One of the best stories that I recall that has very little to do with GMOs is the story about John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America.
And Howard Lyman.
And Howard Lyman.
Do you know who Howard Lyman is? He's the leading cowboy. Go ahead, you tell the story.
The book is what's the book called? The Mad Cowboy?
The Mad Cowboy.
Mad Cowboy. He was a pig farmer. He was a pig farmer. And he got this book.
Somebody gave him the book.
Somebody gave him the book. And he tried to flush it down the damn commode. But he finally read the book. He read the book.
And he turned his farm into a petting zoo.
And he's vegan. And now he goes around talking to
Yeah.
We have a friend, a very dear friend, who some of you may know, may not know. His name is Eric Russo. Eric owns a bunch of Goodyear tire and rubber franchises.
He's the guy that says hi up your skirt.
He's the guy that says, I get there from your skirt. Eric, he assisted some of the classes. He's this G.I. Joe guy. He weighed 300 and some pounds. He ate everything. His mother gave him a copy of T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study. It sat on his bedstand for the longest time. He finally read the book. He read the book, became vegan, just like that.
And he became an activist for
Became
food.
an activist for food.
Yeah.
And now you got this guy, so you never know what's going to make
Motivate
the
somebody.
person next door. You never know what's going to make you want to do something and change. So, not to sell a book, but you get a lot of stuff from it. And not just this book, but read all of them. Get the China Study. Read the China Study by T. Colin Campbell. It's a dry read, but boy, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. He's a good friend. He's a good guy. He's a big heart. And he's mission driven. You know, you gotta look for people that are mission driven. They're about the mission, not about the money. Not about the money, about the mission.
I was going to say something. You take that book there on his letters.
Yeah.
Okay, you walk around. This is true now. I went into the doctor's office and I had this book, and this woman said, "Well, what's going on here?"
Catchy title.
And I told her in a few sentences what it was, and I said, "And you should be made us hell too." And she was back up against the wall, really, and I had my finger in her face. I was telling her all this stuff,
And she's like, Looney Tune alert.
just give her the book around.
I tell you, we have our website,
Thank you.
every single week, we get between 27,000 and 35,000 visitors to Christina's website. That equates to over 1.5 million visitors a year coming to the website. I get every day, people can, through contact us, they can ask a question
Yeah, please don't.
on the website. We get hundreds of them. Christina's business manager in New York says, I'm up till 3 o'clock in the morning because I read every one. And I read every one. And some of them are so amazing. I bought your book, I'm mad as hell. It's changed my life. I live in Rhode Island. My chubby. It's not about the book. It's about, you gotta get motivated to do something.
You have to educate yourself, and that makes you motivated. Hold on, there's some questions. Hold on. Yes.
I'm a different generation than probably 80% of you here, but you're not.
I'm 80.
I'm 80. You're not 80. Anyway, you're missing. You're another generation with all of your internet and all of this stuff, but dinosaurs still use the telephone.
That's right.
Okay, and we have found out our endocrinologist never even heard of a GMO. I'm going to the cardiologist next week. I'm going to see, this is really ground with I call Whole
Springdale
Foods,
Farms.
what on your hot bar is GMO free? Nothing. Nothing. We're trying so hard, maybe in a year or so we'll be able to. I call ShopRite. How many of your stuff is organic, and do you have organic this, and this that I'm looking for? No, I don't. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to shop there. I really like your store. If enough.
But if everyone did what you're doing, called them and said, I'm not going to shop in your store, they would get what you wanted.
Yes, but that's not internet. That's just personal.
Yeah, that's how my mother did it.
Well, I knew mother thinks that.
Actually, my mother would be your age if she was
All right,
alive.
so you're a nice kid. When I get where she is, I'll tell her you're a nice kid.
That's good. She thought I was a pain in the ass.
But start this. Some of your people just advise them to pick up the phone and
Pick up the
find
phone.
out where Springdale Farms, I called, we have nothing that's GMO. My daughter called, they said, oh yes, everything has GMOs in it in our store.
Is what they told her.
It's what they told her. When she called,
I emailed and they said, yeah, everything's GMO free.
so there's something new. We have to take this a little further because they say, but this is personal.
But this is personal. You're right. You actually said the best phrase of the night. This is personal.
Christina was talking, I was thinking, everybody here should, when they go to the supermarket the next time, even if it's Whole Foods, I don't care where it is, you go to the supermarket, ask the manager,
Absolutely.
what's GMO free? If they say everything is GMO free, ask them show me the farm certification that says it's GMO.
Not only that, but then I say I have to go back to my group and mention the name, because they want to know, where to go as well as I want to know where to go.
That's right.
So whether it has any effect or not from one person doing it, I don't know. But if a lot of people came in the same day or in the same
But
week,
it does have a difference. It does make a difference. One person makes a difference. I mean, one person becomes 100 people. It just does.
whatever. You probably accomplished this on internet and all this stuff. I don't know, but I've got
sure what the internet
to see face to face.
Really? I'm not sure what the internet accomplishes.
Yes.
What's really interesting is Christina's show runs on PBS.
Anyways, thank you.
So the viewers are old, tend to skew a little bit old. And so many people call, I don't have a computer, I want to buy that book I saw on TV, I'm mad as hell. So yeah, we get a lot of phone calls and we take the orders over the telephone because all people don't have them.
And people that don't even have phone numbers, I accuse them of being prejudiced against dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. All right, I'm going to thank you guys very much because
I do have probably 2 seats left in my car to go to the FDA and rally. I mean, how could anyone not?
I don't want to go.
Wait, what day is it? What day?